The Audible is back in action. I'm with my guys, Donnie Rightside and the Whale Capper, breaking down each and every division 2 months before kickoff in week 1. Today we talk about the NFC North. At my book, the Bears, Packers, and Vikings have a win total of 9.5, and they all have it juiced to the under. And then the Lions are sitting at 6.5, and I believe they will win more than 6.5 games. Donnie Rightside, the NFC North.
Yep, got a 3-horse race in this one. And again, I like where you're going with the Detroit Lions, thinking about going over the team total, because they quietly put together a pretty good organization and a pretty good team. And we'll see if they can advance in this year as second-year regime head football coach. But let's also take a look at the other parts of the division. It's not called the black and blue division for nothing. You have the number 1 defense in the NFC last year in the Bears, the number 2 defense in the NFC in the Minnesota Vikings. And then you have a brittle quarterback who has so much talent out there. Can he get them back on top of the hill in the Green Bay Packers? A lot to talk about. I'm looking forward to this.
I'm looking forward to this divisional breakdown as well. A very tight race. Whale Capper, do you see an edge?
So one of these teams is going to win double-digit wins, but, for best I can tell you, your guess is as good as mine. There are things to like and things to be concerned about for all 3 of these teams at the top. Maybe the one thing we're going to agree on here is that there probably is some value on the Lions. People are sleeping on that team, and it's not good to sleep on Lions.
It is not good to sleep on Lions. Yes, I think they're going to be very tough, but let's start with the favorite, the Chicago Bears. Win total 9.5, juiced to the under, minus 135 to the under. Division plus 170, conference plus 750, Super Bowl plus 1,400, Khalil Mack, Defensive Player of the Year, plus 333. I do think this is a favorite to win the division. I do think this Chicago Bears team will take care of the NFC North. Number 1 NFC defensive rate last year. Expect the same this year. Khalil Mack is a beast. Can Mitch Trubisky take that much-needed step forward? He was not good in that wild card loss to the Eagles, even though he threw for 300 yards. It was his first 300-yard game since week 10. He finished with 24 TDs, 12 interceptions. Are Allen Robinson and Taylor Gabriel good enough at wide receiver? Jordan Howard was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Bears followed up that move by drafting David Montgomery in the 3rd round of this year's draft. Is Montgomery the workhorse running back that the Bears need? Donnie Rightside, I like the Bears to win the NFC North.
I think the Bears are a really good football team. And if we break it down just looking at roster per roster, I think they're the most talented football team here in the NFC North. And it isn't amazing that you look and say, oh, Mitchell Trubisky, the Ferrari's coming out, the Maserati. And then you watch him in actual during game-to-game play, and you say, boy, looks like he's holding this football team back. He's actually, to me, if we have all 4 quarterbacks, all 4 teams here, on the bottom of the barrel quarterbacks that I would actually pick in this division if I want to lead it. But the overcompensation, the defense is absolutely sensational and got stronger. You added some pieces to offense that I think are going to really make a nice move here. Now, the one thing that you're going to look at the Chicago Bears this year, you're not creeping up on anybody. I didn't see it last year. Game-to-game basis, it was nice to get a read on them. But if we were doing this same show last year, I was really behind on the Bears saying, you know what? I just want to see what Trubisky does, and maybe the following year they'll make that move. Then they make a couple moves. Khalil Mack comes in defensive end, and they crush it down the stretch. And a double doink in the playoffs, they're moving on with a playoff win under the belt, but not the case here. I do like what the Bears have going on here, but if you can see the quick synopsis that I have, I think the quarterback is going to hold them out. Do I think they're the most talented? Absolutely. But when you watch the Chicago Bears, there's at least 2 times every single game you go, where was he throwing that football to? Almost a strike to the opposing team. I think that's going to hold him back. I have another team in this division that I have rated a little bit higher than the Bears to win it.
Wow, very interesting. You had a great read on these Bears last year. Whale Capper, is Trubisky capable of taking this team to another NFC North championship, or will he hold them back?
I got to see it to believe it with Trubisky. I'm not buying stock in the Bears right now. I think they're overpriced. There's kind of a popular thing going around. People are betting Trubisky to win MVP. People are betting the Bears to win the Super Bowl. I am much more bearish on the Bears, for a lack of a better pun, than the market in general. I think if we look back at what they did last season, I'm glad, Donnie, you brought up the double doink. If that field goal goes in, they head out to LA instead of the Cowboys. And I thought they matched up really well with the Rams, and probably could have punched their ticket to the Big Easy for the NFC title game. I think that would have been a pretty important step for this team in terms of their overall progression to get a playoff win under them. Instead, you have to kind of live with the fact that your quarterback of the future, a guy you traded up from the 3rd pick to the 2nd pick for, and one of the weirder trades we've seen on draft day in years past, he does not necessarily look like a guy that is anywhere near as good as a guy who was drafted after him in Pat Mahomes, a guy who was drafted after him in Deshaun Watson, and a lot of his shortcomings as a quarterback were made up for by spectacular coaching by Matt Nagy. He was incredible in crafting game scripts last year and really put the Bears in position to do well early in games, get off to some good starts, let their defense play downhill. What can any of that be repeated is a very, very tough question, especially in the regular season. They have a much tougher schedule last year. They were afforded a supremely soft landing over the first half of the season last year. And that really got things rolling in the right direction for the team. Young coach, young quarterback, got everybody's confidence up. This year with expectations coming in high, I can't help but want to sell this team now and, look for opportunities to back them if it does not go, the way things are expected over the first half of the season. Maybe once the weather gets a little colder, maybe once some teams come into Soldier Field later on in this season, you'll get some nice prices to back the Bears game by game. But I'm not putting a lot of hope or a lot of stock that this team really has, the quarterback horsepower to put them in contention for an NFC title or a Super Bowl win.
Interesting stuff. It seems like I'm a little bit higher on the Bears than Donnie and Whale Capper. Well, let's go to a team that I'm not high on, the Green Bay Packers. Also 9.5, juiced a little bit more to the under at -140. Division +190. Conference 10-1. Super Bowl 20-1. Aaron Rodgers, most passing yards +650. Devontae Adams, most receiving yards +1,600. Are they overrated? Matt LaFleur era begins. Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback, but they lack depth at playmaking positions. What happens if Devontae Adams gets hurt? Green Bay's backfield finished 24th in total receptions last season, and the unit's 17% target share was well below league average. Aaron Jones comes into camp in great shape. They need him to be a monster. Jimmy Graham had just 2 TDs last season. Their defense ranked 10th in the NFC last season. Looks to have improved. First-round pick Rashawn Gary could be very good outside linebacker. They had a strong draft, but I don't want much to do with these Green Bay Packers, at least at this point. Donnie Rightside, the Packers.
Yeah, looking at the Green Bay Packers, anytime you have Aaron Rodgers, and it looks like, Ted Thompson used to get a lot of respect there in Green Bay. Man, look at they keep it within, they draft from within, they don't get free agents. Well, it's like the Tom Brady rule in New England. As long as you have that guy at the helm, you're going to have a competitive team, regardless if you whiff after whiff after whiff on your draft picks. But now we're taking a look at Aaron Rodgers getting a little bit older. It's about him being healthy. And it's not to say that the Green Bay Packers won't have a good offensive line. They were really banged up on the offensive line last year. And you saw from game one, maybe that knee injury from Aaron Rodgers was a lot worse than what was actually led on. But let's not forget, it's about the foes that you're playing. If you're just playing in a vacuum, oh man, having Aaron Rodgers, doesn't matter who has it wide out, doesn't matter who has it running back, he's going to make it work. But now you're seeing a first-year head coach come in after, McCarthy leaves last year on unceremonious terms. Now you hear a little bit of rumblings in, preseason play, like, hey, I don't know if this coach has it, or they're going back and forth. Aaron Rodgers, not the easiest guy to get along with, but let's not forget who he's going up against here. You have a nasty defense in Minnesota that's already put Aaron Rodgers out for the year one time. You have a nasty defense in Chicago that almost put Rodgers out for the year last year. You have an up-and-coming defense in Detroit. They are going to be coming after him loaded for bear during those division games. And Aaron Rodgers shows a little bit of chips, a little bit of chinks. That offense, that team is nowhere without Aaron Rodgers. So I'm going to put them third on the pedestal here in the NFC North here, behind the Minnesota Vikings and behind the Bears, because I don't trust this roster anymore, Jimmy. I don't see the explosiveness. You're right. They have one wide receiver. If he gets banged up, who are we going to here? They're facing nasty defenses in a much better division than most of the NFL has. I see a downturn here because let's not hide the facts here with the Packers. 5-year win trend, 12 wins. 10, 7, 6. This team isn't getting better. It's getting worse.
I agree. I absolutely agree with that breakdown. Whale Capper, are we being too hard on these Green Bay Packers?
We're going to learn we're going to get an answer to a question that has been asked a lot over the last year, which is, how good is Aaron Rodgers still as a quarterback? Is he the guy that put up some absolutely like impossibly good numbers, or has he fundamentally, regressed in terms of his potential, his performance? Because as Aaron Rodgers goes, so the Green Bay Packers go this season, and there's very few teams in the league where you can make more true of a statement of it's kind of all down to one player. If we break down Aaron Rodgers and his play over the last couple of years, granted, ton of Donnie nailed it. Ton of it influenced by a couple of wild injuries. You can't necessarily predict that stuff. Broken collarbones, torn knees, things like that. Are part of playing the position. And then when you have an offensive line that's getting up there in age and can't necessarily protect you, you got to be worried about that stuff. But look at some of the performance that he put up late in the season. He was doing some things that you don't like to see out of a quarterback who you think of as sort of the top tier quarterback. He's gotten, in my opinion, he's got a problem with risk aversion. And I'll describe what that means. You look at his stats and you're like, well, the guy never throws a pick, right? Well, guess what? If you're not ahead in games, you have to take chances. You have to be risky. If you're playing a team that's better than you on the road, if you're at Foxborough playing Tom Brady and the Patriots, in week 8, 9, you can't play a conservative game plan and expect to come back in that game. You have to be aggressive. And Aaron Rodgers is showing a kind of a pattern now. He's establishing this pattern of not taking chances down the field because he doesn't want to, be known. He doesn't want to create the turnover. He loves looking at that 0 on the stat sheet, and he just, can't get over that hump in terms of, look, there are times in the game where you have to be more aggressive. And so rather than take passes that would be there in the 11 to 15 yard range, which would move the chains, instead he's throwing it down the field 30, 40 yards. His receivers aren't getting open because they aren't as talented. He's shrugging like, hey, man, I'm throwing the ball down. My guys can't catch it. Like, all of this is all of these things kind of mixed together into this perception that he's not a team guy, that he can't work with these guys. You throw a new quarterback, new coach in there, Matt LaFleur, who has risen faster than we've seen anyone rise. And granted, I was cold on the Sean McVay hire 2 years ago by the Rams, and he has wildly exceeded my expectations. Okay, Matt LaFleur could do that as well, but we didn't see anything about the way he coordinated the Tennessee Titans offense last year that suggests he's coming in this year and he's going to light the world on fire with Aaron Rodgers. There are cracks, there are problems, and there is a lot for this team to prove if they expect to contend for the NFC North title, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree, and I very much disliked a lot of LaFleur's decisions over the last couple of years. I thought he had weapons that weren't being used, Corey Davis being one of them. Okay, let's move on to these Vikings, and I find them difficult to predict, and I guess it's just due to the strength of this division and maybe the parity on top of this division. Vikings win total 9.5. The under is juiced to -145. Division plus 210. Conference plus 1,200. Super Bowl plus 2,800. Dalvin Cook most rushing yards 20-1. First round pick Garrett Bradbury will help everyone on offense. Protect. Kyle Rudolph got his extension. Kirk Cousins needs to be better. Dalvin Cook, a beast running the ball. Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen are very good. Now, can Everson Griffin revert to that 2017 form? When you're dealing with mental health issues, you just don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen. Xavier Rhodes is an excellent corner. Is this defense getting worse? What's going to happen with these Minnesota Vikings? Donnie Rightside.
Yeah, you know what? When we take a look at a couple things on the Vikings here, because I'm a little bit higher than most people are, and I like to look at the prices that you're going to get. You're going to get a little bit more than 2-1 to win the NFC North. I like that. Super Bowl 25-1, NFC 12-1, because I think this team, and it's kind of interesting the way you put it, because the quarterback Kirk Cousins, we know can put up stats. We saw him in Washington, but Donnie, he didn't win anything. And then you see him come over. He's the last missing key ingredient to a Super Bowl run for the Vikings that they didn't have, and he didn't play very well, getting a lot of money. The thing I like about that is you take a step back in the offseason, and he's not one of those moping guys who say, you get on him. Like you see a Cam Newton. You ever watch a Cam Newton game with the Carolina Panthers, throws an interception, head goes down, and he says, you know what, I don't even care what happens the rest of this game. At least I know Kirk Cousins is going to get an honest effort from. But I like what they have on offense. A little bit underwhelming on the offensive line, but they have everything you need at wide receiver, decent tight end. And the one thing I like the most here is they went out and got a running back, a durable running back out of Boise State that can spell the load for Cook, because when you look, the kid is so talented, but you got to be on the field, and he's such a playmaker. The easiest routes in football to keep up with and break games open are what? Screen passes, dumps out into the flat. He's sensational on that. So load management that we talk about Kawhi Leonard, the NBA, load management on Cook is going to be so critical and so key next year. I think this team has the ability to make a jump up because the defense, as we said, number 2 overall last year in the NFC. They're going to come back. Very good head coach who obviously is defensive minded. And the one thing that we're missing out also is, boy, they had some, I don't even want, fire and ice, oil and water. The head football coach hates the offensive coordinator. He's finally removed. So maybe get some calming and you get some peace back there where Kirk Cousins can get after it. I think this team has the most upside. I like the price that they're getting. Now, if we're talking about the minus 110, plus 110 to win the NFC North, maybe not so much, but I think they're getting a good price here. I think they can hit their team total. I think as a long shot on the Super Bowl, if I think Kirk Cousins can improve just enough, that's a sleeper team to win the NFC here. I'm really high on the Vikings to win this division, Jimmy.
Wow, that is an exciting take. Whale Capper, do you feel what Donnie feels on these Vikings?
Donnie and I have agreed a lot on these previews to this point, and I think it's because we're both smart football guys. But we don't agree on this one. I don't think I see more red flags and more problems, and it starts with the head coach here and his overall philosophy and kind of the fit with how he wants to conduct this team, how he wants to, what he wants the team's identity to be, formed around. Doesn't really jive with how his roster is constructed. It doesn't really jive with how you win football in 2019. He's got 2 of the most outstanding weapons in the passing game in Diggs and Thielen. He's got a quarterback in Kirk Cousins that they are backing up a Brinks truck to pay. You have got to lean on those guys on offense. You cannot, force out an offensive coordinator, bring in a guy and dictate, you will establish the run. That's not how you win football in 2019. Like they are going to have loads of games where you go in thinking, oh, well, they're playing this weak defense. They should put up 25, 30 points this week. And they come out and score 21. And you're just going to be scratching your head like, what is going on here? Like the philosophy, the approach, everything that Zimmer is bringing to the table here for the Vikings screams red flags to me as far as being competitive in 2019. And you combine that with the fact that I'm not really sold that Kirk Cousins is a quarterback that deserves to get paid the way he is, that because they are giving him so much money, they're a little bit thin at a lot of their, a lot of places around the field. So you get an injury on your offensive line. Next thing you know, same old Vikings, can't protect the quarterback. Kirk Cousins' efficiency plummets. Kirk Cousins needs a clean pocket. Absolutely. He's got phenomenal weapons to throw to, but you can't expect him to get it done if Khalil Mack is breathing down his neck 6 sacks a game. And so, there are a lot of things that are obviously in place for the Vikings to succeed. Talent on defense, talent in the receiving core, but fundamentally, if I was to put a 3-way market together and I was going to line Vikings fail to make the playoffs, Zimmer is fired, Vikings win 10 games, or the Vikings are, NFC title winners, to me, the most likely category is they fail to make the playoffs and Zimmer is gone after this year. They need a fresh face in there. They need a guy who's not, so focused on the defensive side of the ball, who's gonna dictate how the offense does things. This is just a recipe for this to go south. And I'm hopeful that I'm wrong because I like Zimmer. He seems like a great guy, and I would like to. I know a lot of Vikings fans that I would like them to have a successful and happy season, but there's just too many red flags for me to be buying Vikings at this time.
Very interesting take on those Vikes. I'm so excited. This is a very exciting division. And here comes a team I'm very high on. Now, I have pumped the brakes on taking too many futures this early, 2 months before the season started. So I've sort of pumped the brakes, but I want this Lions over badly. Win 6.5. Over at minus 120, division 12-1, conference 40-1, Super Bowl 80-1. The only person that I don't believe, I like this roster. It's, do I trust Matt Patricia? A lot of strange comments from him last year about preparation. I don't know. I expect him to be much, much better. I hope he is much, much better. Their offense was terrible last year. How much will it improve? They bring in the best tight end in the draft, T.J. Hawkinson, out of Iowa. They had C.J. Anderson from the Rams to spell Kerryon Johnson. Kerryon Johnson only played 7 games last year. This guy is very, very good, needs to stay healthy. They bring in Amendola. They bring in Curse. They need a healthy Marvin Jones Jr. He may or may not be healthy at this point. Trey Flowers, snack should be strong up front. Darius Slay, an elite quarterback. Quandre Diggs at safety. Jared Davis at middle linebacker. Tavon Wilson, Tracy Walker at strong safety. How is it only 6.5 wins? I see this as being a good football team. Donnie Rightside, am I too high on these lines?
I don't think you're too high on the lines, but expectations that we're all looking at just from an outside perspective is say, well, I mean, we know it's a 3-horse race, and there's sort of that 4-horse bringing up the rear. So that's where you tend to get value when you're a gambler, when it's not one of those, hey, this team's really good, and you buy on the high side. You want to buy on the low side because I always like to take a look at the 5-year run when you really break it down in the NFL, and you see the win totals where it's 5, 5.5, 6 or 6.5. You say, boy, that team is really bad. But even the bad teams win football games. It's the same baseball analogy. That team stinks so bad, but they're still going to win 60 games in the season. If we take a look at their 5-year win run, 11, 7, 9, 9, and 6. They're already right there. The thing you need in the thing you need in the NFL to win games is a quarterback and a guy who's willing to be able to come back in the fourth quarter and be a gunslinger. Matthew Stafford is that. The one thing that we needed them to improve on is the offense. You go out and get Amendola as the slot receiver. It doesn't sound that type of dynamic, but just that guy who can get open on 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 is something they haven't had over the past couple of years because you have two pretty good outside wideouts in Jones and Galladay, and you have a nice plethora of running backs they can use. And Jimmy already brought up the point. They got a dynamic tight end. They have all levels that you can use. And let's flip it over to the defensive side. You get some nice additions in free agency. You have a good pass rush. You have a defensive end in Flowers who's going to play there for you as opposed to Zeke Anza, who seemed to miss every other game or maybe be banged up or not want to play football. You have good levels at linebacker, good levels at cornerback, and also at safety. And you have a defensive-minded head coach. They're not going to win this division. They're not going to make the playoffs. But, Jimmy, they're getting 7 wins.
I think so. I think they can get 8 wins. Whale Capper,
Yes.
am I too high on the Lions?
No, we're in the same boat here. I think 7 is probably actually a reasonable floor for this team. I think most likely you're looking at 8 or 9, and a lot of it is because I really don't. I'm not a believer in the 3 teams that they share division with. I think they're going to get home wins against the likes of the Vikings, Packers, and Bears. So it's there are, and they have the easiest schedule out of these 4 teams. You look at Stafford's play last year, and you're like, wow, man, how did he turn into a bottom half of the league quarterback? And then lo and behold, reports trickle out this offseason. He was dealing with a fractured back, and so it's like, okay, well, if a guy is as talented as we know Stafford is, and he was limited by a back injury all year last year, it's completely reasonable to expect he has a much better performance in 2019 than we saw from him in 2018. And so, add that to the list of positives to back the Lions. I share 100% your concern, Jimmy, about Matt Patricia's ability to all of a sudden be a good coach. All of the signs, all of the indications, all of the reports out of Detroit Lions camp last year from the first training camp to the end of the season were not good. It did not look like Patricia is ready to be this, a head coach in the NFL. It does not look like he really took a lot of lessons from last year and applied them in terms of the way they addressed their roster construction. I thought if they have a weakness on this team, it is in their secondary. They, instead of addressing the secondary, went after, high-priced free agents on the, pass rushing standpoint. You can do some good things with effective pass rushers, but if you can't cover guys, if you're leaving guys open down the field, then you're going to lose some games you should be competitive in or you should win. And so that's probably the only Patricia and the holes in the secondary are the 2 things that are keeping me from kind of being like there's value on the Lions to win the North. There probably is, because I really there are enough red flags on all the other teams, and of all of the there's every year there's a surprise. Last year, if we had done this NFC North podcast, preview, I don't think we at all would have been like bet the Bears to win the NFC North, right? There are surprises year in, year out. If the Lions happen to be the surprise this year and they come out and win the North with 9-7, where everybody else is 8-8, I will not be remotely surprised. They have the quarterback to do it, and they have a loaded roster. They just need Patricia to pull his head out of his ass, basically.
Well put. And I think a half unit on the division at my book at 12-1 makes sense. But with the Stafford injury, I may want to wait to make sure that he's healthy going into week 1. There it is, Donnie, the NFC North. After talking with you guys about it, I'm even higher on the Lions. And I'm looking at the division at plus 1,200, and I think, man, value. Why would I take the Bears at plus 170? And I like your point, Donnie, about Trubisky probably being the weakest of these 4 quarterbacks. I found this breakdown very illuminating, and it sucks that it's 2 months before the season because I want to make these bets now, Donnie. Donnie, NFC North, final thoughts.
Yeah, final thought. Will Kemper brought up a great point here. I mean, beggars can't be choosers, and we can't go back and revisit what happened in the past, but Patrick Mahomes on the Bears, Deshaun Watson on the Bears, as opposed to Trubisky, that is an amazing analogy. When you really think of it, probably should have happened, and look at where the Bears would be today, but you can't do that. I think the Bears are the most talented. I just think you win with the quarterback, and I think Trubisky might take a step back in this race. I'm going to lean on Minnesota in this environment here. They got a nice finish to the season with 3 home games versus division rivals. And again, it's all about value. I don't want to lay minus. I just want to be on the plus side. I'm going Vikings in this. Green Bay, we'll see. We're high on Detroit, but I'm going to go with the Vikings this one. I'll take the 2-1.
Whale Capper, final thoughts on the NFC North.
Okay, so Bears have a replacement level quarterback. The Packers have a completely unknown at head coach. The Vikings have an especially problematic philosophy for today's NFL. I think all of that presents value in the form of the Lions. But in addition to the Lions win total, in addition to probably sprinkling some 12-1, I'm sure I'll have a little bit of that division total. I think the division is decided in the last 2 weeks of the season. All of these teams kind of bunched together around 500 for 16 weeks feels about right. And then week 17, primetime game. One of the 2 NFC North prime games will be in prime time to decide the division winner. That's just the way that it's that tight. But the one thing I am confident in, Lions, week 1, pick them against the Cardinals. Really?
Yeah.
You're telling me the Lions and the Cardinals are in any way, even though they're on the road, the desert is not a great home field advantage spot, especially in early September. Who knows what kind of crowd attendance you're going to get, how fired up that crowd is going to be for this team. All that is a huge unknown. First ever start for your rookie quarterback in Kyler Murray. I love the Lions week 1. That is a line that looks like it will probably close. I don't know, close to lines by a field goal. So if you're handicapping week 1, get some lines in your pocket.
I love it. I love it. There you go, the NFC North. On behalf of Donnie Rightside, the Whale Capper, and myself, everybody at Sportsbook Review, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for watching all of our divisional breakdowns.